All right, it's time for our next unit here in math, and this one's going to be about decimals. So our first goal is to write, compare, and order decimals using place values and number lines to make sure you really understand that. Write this down along with today's date and page number, new unit, new effort. All right, here is your warm-up then. I have 3 series of numbers. I want you to put them in least to greatest. Come back when you're done. So I hope you didn't find these too difficult to be able to do today. Here are the correct answers you should have gotten. What usually helps me when trying to order things, and this is to help you in the video today, I usually stack all the place values evenly, and then I'm able to figure out what number is greater or less as I kind of go from place value to place value, starting in the hundreds with every single one of these, then the tens, and then the ones. So decimals, here we go. As we know, decimals are numbers that are just like fractions. They're less than one whole, but they're just written in a different way. We like decimals a little more, I think, because we're looking at them as place values and not as a different kind of language like fractions seem to be for some people. So by looking at the different place values, we can kind of understand them, I think, a little better. So let's go into place values and let's get a couple notes down so we really know what we're kind of working with. This must be in your notebook. So place values help us understand, write, and compare numbers. It helps us to understand where these numbers are and what they're worth. So the only reason I have hundreds, tens, and ones here is because I'm more worried about the decimals, so I want to make sure we understand. Now, one of the things I'm going to want you to add to this is the decimal point. That we usually read it as and. Decimal point means and. So when we look at single digits or whole numbers, they're always like ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on. Decimals have this THS suffix. And the THS is to help you kind of decipher the difference between a whole number and a fraction. So this is kind of the farthest we're probably going to go with decimals, is to the tenths, which is the first place value after the decimal point. Hundredths, thousandths is the third one, 10,000ths, and 100,000ths. That's about as high as we're probably going to go with our work this year. So make sure you have this down and the example, because whenever you go doing your work through the rest of the unit, I'm going to say what place value is this number in. If you don't know, I'm going to make you open up to this. Okay, get this done and come back. So in practice 1, we're going to get to understand fractions, or I'm sorry, decimals a little bit. Sorry if I scared you there. Decimals a little bit better. So there's 3 different ways you can write decimals, and I want you to have this whole slide down, at least A and B down as examples. The 3 different ways that you can write a number is in standard form, like you see next to letter A, 1 and 7 hundredths, 1.07, that's a standard form. Expanded form is when you look at it place value by place value, and you kind of separate it so you're pulling each chunk away so you can kind of see how it's different. So you can see for 1 and 7 hundredths, we have 1 plus, and then the 7 is separate because that's the different place value. Word form is writing it out by word, and I'm going to have you practice this quite a bit here in the video. So we write it as 1 and, again you can see the decimal point is and then you put down the number that you see. I see a 7, and then what place value it's in, hundredths. 1 and 7 hundredths. So for B, we started with the expanded form, 3 hundredths plus 6 thousandths plus 9 ten thousandths. So when you go to standard form, you just kind of add the 3 together, and you get 0.0369. And again, writing the whole thing out in word form, you write down the number you see, which is 369, and then you would write down the place value that that last number is in. The 9 is in the 10,000ths place value, and that's how you write that. So if you need extra time to write this down, do so, but I expect you to have this in as a good example. Here's another example. Let's say we start, you don't have to write this one down. Let's say you start with the word form, 14 and 8 hundredths. Any number before the word and means it's a whole number. So we're going to write 14 and, so 14 point. and then 8 hundredths. So you write down 8 and make sure it's in the right place value, the hundredths. Expanded form here, we have to separate the tens place value, which is a 1, the ones place value, which is a 4, 10 plus 4, plus the 8 in the hundredths. So that's how you separate that. And here's your practice. Again, you see 8 problems up here. We're only going to focus on 4 of them. The others are there in case we need extra practice. So all I want you to do is do these 4. Take your time to make sure you write them out in all 3 forms. You see for number 1 we have standard form. So you're going to have to write it as expanded and word. Number 2 is word, so you got to write standard and expanded. 3 is expanded, and 4 is again standard. Come back when you're done. Here are the correct answers for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for number 1, expanded it out. I separated the 1, the 9, the 8. And that's 1 and 98 hundredths. And I underlined the THS to show you we're dealing with the decimal. Number 2, we did have a THS at the end, so we knew we were dealing with a decimal. And we had 10 before and, so 10.041, 41 thousandths. So since it's a thousandths, that last number has to go in that last place value. And you can see how I did on the other 2. So for 3 and 4, neither of them had a whole number, so we didn't have any number and then the word and. So they all just started that way. You can see all you have to do is write the word, or write the number, and then what's the last place value. So you can see I skipped practice 2 and example 2, but really it's the same thing as example 3, practice 3. So we're going to kind of break it down a little bit like this. All right, you're going to see here that we're going to deal with comparing and ordering decimals. So I have 3 decimal numbers listed, 16 and 67 hundredths, 16 and 6 tenths, and 16 and 7 hundredths. Now if I had to order these from least to greatest, the best thing to do for comparing them is to list them by stacking them. So you can see here, this is the most important thing I want you to see when comparing and ordering fractions. I made sure that all the place values lined up. We have the tens, and all the ones are in the tens place value. We have the ones. Every single ones place value is represented with a 6. Then we put the tenths place value, which again, they're all listed as a 6. And then the hundredths place value is where you finally see a little bit of difference. We have a 7. We had one that didn't have any number there, but I added a 0 so that it looks the same as the others. And then we have another 7. So as you can see here, we're listing them out so that they look accurate. Of course, one thing you'll notice here is that I do have a mistake. I typed a 6 here. I meant to put a 0. So now it's all the way it should look. So to organize numbers from least to greatest, or even greatest to least, you start at the far left. Our largest place value is the tens. We see no change in the ones. So then we got to go to the ones place value. Again, they're all 6s. So now we jump into our decimal place values so we can find a change. And we see our first change on the bottom one for 16 and 7 hundredths. We have a 0 there. So that makes that one the least. So we put that one down first. Then we look at the hundreds place value, and we can see we now, and I'll cross it out, we now have a 7 and a 0 in those spots. Well, it doesn't take much effort for you to know that a 0 is less than a 7, so 16.06 is actually our second place value. So I'll rewrite it over here, 16.07. The next least one is 16.60. And then finally, the one with the 7 there is our third, or our greatest, 16.67. So that's what you're going to have to be able to do with these, is compare them, stack them, and work with them. Now the other thing you could do with them, and I'll let you choose if you need to write this down in your notes or not, is you could always make a number line. Now with our number line, there's a ton of numbers here, but really what we've done is we've taken a number line of integers and we stretched it out. As you can see here, we have numbers all between 16 and 17. And by adding these extra dashes, we now put them into tenths, 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, and so on. From here, you can start to categorize where those numbers are, and here you can tell it's easily able to see that 16.07 is the least and 16.67 is the greatest. Okay, just like the last practice, we're going to focus on just the top three. So go ahead and put those in least to greatest. Come back when you're done. Remember, the hint is write them stacked. Put all the ones place values together, tens, hundredths, and so on. Good luck. And here are my answers with my work. You'll see I did stack them so I could look at them place value by place value. And there's the answers. Remember, you have to read them properly by reading the whole number, decimals, and then read the number you see in the decimals place values along with the last place value digit. So we're in the home stretch now of this video. It's time for you to give a good box of thought and give a good explanation of these three questions. Explaining why 5/10 is greater than 29 hundredths, even though the number 29 is greater than 5. Name the decimal with the least value out of those, so put them in least to greatest, and tell me how you know that the answer is its least value. And name three numbers between 0.5 and, or I'm sorry, 1.5 or 1 and 5/10 and 1 and 6/10. How can you find at least 10 different numbers? I just need 3. I could easily say 10. And your box, or sorry, your quiz is 5 questions, but you can kind of see it's like broken down a little bit. And I can move this out of the way for you before you work. All right, so the first 3, you're going to write them, making sure that the word number is written 3 different ways. Number 4 is kind of a word problem, but you're really looking at ordering them. And number 5 is just ordering those 3 numbers least to greatest. Good luck. And that's our lesson for today. We'll see you later. Can't wait to see your notebooks and see how well you did.